Welcome back to the Kevin O'Connor Show. Joining me today to discuss the NBA draft is my old friend, Tate Frazier. We're going to do 23 NBA draft questions. I got 23 questions for you, Tate. So a lot of questions.
LeBron 23, Michael Jordan 23, or Draymond 23? That's what the people are asking right now. We'll see what happens.
For you, a Jordan 23 is a Tar Heels guy. So let's start out with number one, NIL. Just happened. A bunch of guys went back to college basketball. Uzan to Houston, Lindenborg transferring to Michigan, Condon back to Florida with multiple transfers there. Pettiford back to Auburn, Miles Byrd back to college. LeBaron Philon shocked a lot of people going back to Alabama. Number one question, Tate. Who's the one guy do you think has the most to gain going back to college basketball?
I think it's a great question. Like you said, there's a lot of top 100 guys who were potentially fringe first round picks that decided, hey, I'll take my chances in college. I'll also take my millions in college because as you and I discussed, there is a lot of $1 million payments that are happening for these guys. Yaxel Lindenborg is a name that, you brought up. He was a first round pick by all mock drafts that I saw, a late first round pick. But guess what he got, KOC? When he signed with Michigan, he got $1 million. If he decides to play for Michigan, he gets $4 million. Now, you do the math there, KOC. That's $5 million. That's a pretty good year. And it's
more than being the 26th pick in the draft.
Right. And more exposure, more coverage, and more of a chance for him to move up into the lottery conversation, which is something that he's sort of banking on. Mackenzie Mbako, another guy who was a top 100 player. Some people had him number one in his class, goes to Indiana, has some lukewarm seasons, has some moments. Has a great kind of draft, test the waters period, right? To the point where people are like, maybe Mbako should stay. Now he's going to go to Texas A&M, be quote unquote, they're calling him the franchise guy of that team. We even got NBA terms trickling down to college basketball at this point. So he's another guy that maybe as a franchise player could work his way up into the lottery conversation. Then number one for me is Carter Knox at Arkansas. I just really think Carter Knox has a lot of interesting tools. And I do think that we saw at the end of the season him fully formalize who he is as a player, and I think next year as the guy for that team, he has a real chance to move his way up into the late lottery, maybe top 20 range. So I think those three guys, and then obviously a guy like Uzan going back to Houston, it would be great for him. We've seen the Houston guys test the waters, go back to college and be great. So there's a lot of good players going back to college, which is a little bit different than what it was pre-2021.
Yeah, definitely a huge difference with the NIL money now. With I think LeBaron Philon going to Alabama. Mark Sears is no longer there. He's graduated. He'll be in the NBA draft, probably an undrafted guy. He's going to have the keys to that offense. They got multiple transfers. Bama, top 25 team in the nation. A lot of eyeballs, a lot of touches for him. I think Philon is a guy with the most to gain. And it was a good choice for him to go back because Philon probably would have been a late first, early second, but he's a lottery level talent. And next year, a bit of a weaker guard class, at least currently on paper. So for Philon, I think he has the most to gain. But number two here, Tate, who do you think is the most to be worried about that they made the wrong decision and that they might not help or could even hurt their stock entering next year's draft?
I think that's a fascinating one just because of the buzz coming out of the first day of the combine. Maybe Pettiford, maybe Tahad Pettiford goes back to an Auburn team that doesn't have the type of talent that he had this year. Obviously, he had Chad Baker-Mazara, a.k.a. the Kelly Oubre of college basketball. Chad Baker-Mazara now transfers to USC to play for the
28 years old? 28 years old now?
He's entering his
Is
Michael
he really
Jordan.
27?
27.
I was close.
You were close. Entering his first year Michael Jordan won his championship is the year that Chad Baker-Mazara will be next year at USC. But he leaves. Janai Broom, who Duolingo kind of went after in a very mean way, but he will also not be back at Auburn next year. So Tahad Pettiford goes back to kind of an empty barren. Now, I know that Bruce Pearl is a magician. I know Bruce Pearl is finding guys from overseas. He's going after the Balkan boys. But again, Pettiford, to me, after all the buzz of the day one combine and everyone talking about how great he was and how great he looked and how he facilitated and he did more creatively than maybe people thought he could even do. I know Jameer Watkins kind of locked him up in the second scrimmage and put some size on him. But again, I thought Pettiford had a lot of good momentum, and I thought he would talk himself into kind of the back end of the first round. Now, if he goes back to Auburn next year, Philon's great. Alabama's really good. Auburn kind of takes a step back. He gets exposed a little bit as the number one option. That could hurt him at the end, especially at his size. So, not to say that I don't believe in Tahad Pettiford, because I really do. I think he's a really good player. But I do think that as the hype was building, he maybe could have capitalized and been a late first-round pick.
Yeah, Pettiford's a guy I've had ranked mid-first, late first in this year's class. And, 6 foot guard. he doesn't have the size of Phylon. I'm not sure he has as much room to grow his draft stock, but ultimately I do think he could at least get a real level of confidence that he'll be a first round pick. And I don't think they quite had that. And that's why they opted to go back to Auburn. So I understand the decision, but I think there's a lot less to gain for him. And he very well without Janai Broom there, and they lose multiple upperclassmen. I mean, I think there's a chance things are harder on him when teams are game planning for him. So now the NBA draft is way weaker. So ever since the end of the college basketball season, Tate, 32 guys that I had originally in my draft guide have gone back to school. 32 players. And some of them, of course, came in the past week after testing the waters. Others chose to go back, like Richie Saunders at BYU. He was probably never going to come out anyway, but I like him. I think he's an NBA prospect. He goes back to school, but 32 guys went back to school. Do you still think this is a good quality NBA draft class, considering all the guys that went back to college ball?
Well, we have this every single year at the combine. Inevitably, some combine scout or somebody that's there will text me as I'm bothering them and badgering them for intel or what's happening there. You know what I mean? They'll say something along the lines of, "This class is not very good," right? This is what happens, KOC. We
always what they say.
It's always a moment where
this class stinks. It falls off after pick 12.
Pick 12, pick 11, right? But then all of a sudden, Tyrese Halliburton's pick 12, and they said the draft fell off after pick 7. So you know what I mean? Like these things happen. Kawhi goes number 15, Giannis goes number 15, right? We know how the story goes. It's the draft. Nobody knows anything, but it is funny to me. This year at the combine, I felt like there was even more of a push of, wow, this class is not very deep. That's why a guy like Cedric Coward can move up to a lottery position potentially just because of the lack of talent and also the lack of guys that are putting their name in the draft in general, right? Since 2021, that pool continues to get smaller and smaller. And guys, now that they have agents in college, KOC, you know this, it's the same agents. It's not like it's different guys. So they have more intel than ever, right? They know more of what their stock is and what a quote unquote promise is. And as you know, covering the draft for a long time, there's a difference between, hey, this team really likes you and they give you a first round grade, as opposed to this team is going to promise to pick you. And there are a lot of guys that get first round grades, not a lot of guys that get first round promises. And I think now that we have so much information, so much intel, so much back and forth and communication, these guys are 15 years old talking to NBA execs now, or at least they have somebody talking to somebody that knows something. You know what I mean? So the intel and the communication back and forth has never been higher. And I think that's why the decisions are so informed. And then when these guys get into the pool, they know really quickly whether they can sink or swim, and they get out, quicker than usual. The guys that waited to the deadline this year were probably the most fascinating because, like RJ Lewis, Jameer Watkins, right? These guys that decided to stay in, they stood pat the entire time. They were like, I'm staying in. I want to be a pro. I believe in myself. I'm going to go to the next level. There was really no confusion or shock at all. And even the guys like Phylon and Pettiford, right? If you talk to the people at the schools, the college side, they're like, or Carter Knox, perfect example. They're like, hey, we're leaning 70% he's coming back. But you talk to draft experts sometimes, and they're like, well, this guy's a fringe lottery guy. Why would he ever, consider doing that? And then, the money comes into play and all that other sort of stuff. But yeah, the pool is shrinking. The talent is staying in college basketball. And once the rev share is in, I think this will change things a little bit. But right now, it's the wild, wild west. So you can make just as much in college, if not more, for 1 year than, staying in the draft, being a second-round pick, getting a two-way deal or whatever it may be. So it's wild that staying in college is now maybe more enticing professionally than playing professional basketball. That is the crux that we are at right now.
Is the draft still strong, though? Is this still a good class? Or has it been diluted so much that it's suddenly now the NBA is going to be getting the, second pickings here from college guys? These are the leftovers. Is it still a good class, though, in your opinion, when you look at some of those guys who are going to be in the 30s, 40s, 50s, or undrafted guys?
Well, I do think that some of the guys that should have been getting more coverage and that are NBA-type players, maybe they bump up a level because of these guys dropping out. Maybe, a guy like a Bryce Williams or a Caleb Love or some of these guys that are NBA archetype bodies potentially, or they have the physical tools to maybe be those types of players. With these guys dropping out, they bump up a level. That could be something that's encouraging. Just as far as my viewpoint of this draft, I've always thought there's a lot of talent on the back end, especially with the bigs. I know everyone's talking about you can't take a center in the top 5, talking about Malawach specifically. You can't take a center potentially in the top 10. There's not a lot of talent, but I really like Vlad Golden. I really like Ryan Kalkbrenner. I think these guys are fascinating bigs, and these are guys that might be, late first round, late second round in Golden's case, right? That there is some talent on the back end. And Will Richard from Florida I really like. So I think there are some hidden gems, as there always are. But as you know, KOC, we're also smart that a guy like Rasheer Fleming or Cedric Coward that used to be hidden gems in the second round, now they're lottery guys because we all know too much. So that's the other part. The movers and shakers of the board, it's changed so much because we know so much.
I think that's a good point. Gavoni said something similar to me when I had him on my pod in Chicago. He's like, I said, will there be a guy who falls a lot? Will there be an NBA version of Shadur Sanders where a guy projected in the top 10 falls to the 20s or the 30s? And he's like, no, I think things are going to be pretty stable this year. And it's to your point about how we have so much information, the players through their agents with all the intel after a full year of doing this. They're not just plucking an agent out in April and they have a month with that guy. They have had some of these guys for 2 years, 3 years or more. And so there's a lot of information there. So let's talk about sort of the NBA finals here, because I want to tie this to the draft. Number 4, who's this year's Jalen Williams? Upperclassman, a wing, becomes a star, keeps getting better. Is there a Jalen Williams in this draft class, Tate?
Well, there is no one-to-one Jalen Williams. Even though I went through Santa Clara's roster, I tried to find another one. I know that, Herb Sindex out there doing the Lord's work, getting NBA players out of Santa Clara. Shout out to him. But I do think that my pick, this is the upperclassman you said keeps getting better and better. I think Cedric Coward, I know that he is very high on people's radars right now. And it's kind of funny, my girlfriend, who Kevin, she is a Wazoo grad. So I watch a lot of Wazoo sports. I have been blessed the past 2 years as I've been doing this. I got to see Jalen Wells last year. I got to see Cam Ward, #1 pick last year. And I got to see Cedric Coward this year. David Riley is one of my favorite young coaches in college basketball. His relationship with Cedric is really important. I think the reason why I really like Cedric is that he does these little things. If you watch the tape, and I know you have on Wazoo, and I've had to watch all these games again because that's what you do in your house. You know what I mean? You got a little give and take. We're watching the Carolina basketball games. We're watching the Wazoo games. Cedric Coward, he crashes the boards offensively. And as I watch the Oklahoma City Thunder and what they do that really breaks your back, yes, they make timely shots. Yes, they defend at a high level. Yes, they foul the hell out of you and don't get caught for it, right? These are the staples of Thunder basketball right now. But what do they also do? They get back-breaking rebounds. Alex Caruso that goes in and crashes. That is what Cedric Coward did for Washington State. He has a very, I wouldn't call it a sixth sense, but he has some sort of sense for the ball, and he has a great anticipatory instinct for where the ball is going to be. And this is just like a secondary skill that I'm talking about, him crashing the boards. So it's like, that's the reason I think he can be a Jalen Williams type, because he can create. He can be a secondary creator. We've seen him do that. He can score. The shot's getting better. The bounce, the athleticism. Since he hurt his shoulder, I feel like he's gotten bouncier since he came back. You can tell he's been working on his legs. So just in general, I'm a big fan of Cedric Coward, but just as a package, an intelligent, high IQ guy, a 7'2" wingspan, all very enticing. And you and I know this, KOC. At number 15, if he's sitting there, OKC is going to hit the Cedric Coward button, and they're going to take him at number 15, and it just feels right. So, I mean, he's got to be the Jalen Williams type.
Might not make it to 15. We'll see. He'd be my answer for that question, too. I love Cedric Coward, had him on the show. I think the maturity aspect with him, too. He's going to be 21 as a rookie. He talks like he's 35. Like, the maturity level's insane. Question number 5, Tate. Who's this year's Alex Caruso? Late round or undrafted guy, dog of a defender, becomes a champion. Does that guy exist in this year's draft class?
I like it. I tried to kind of, spin the wheels a little bit on this. I think that the two names, and the reason that I didn't take, so Drake Powell would be my first round pick. I think Drake Powell is going to end up in the first round. So he would be my first round Alex Caruso. Maybe you don't ask him to do that much dirty work, but I think if you ask Drake, he can do it. But my late round undrafted pick for this, there are two guys that I would choose. And one of them is more in the Lou Dort than the Alex Caruso, but we'll take it for now. Elijah Martin out of Florida would be my Alex Caruso of this class, where it's just like, if I bring him in the gym we got a shot that he's going to pick up who your best player is, and he's going to do a really good job of defending him and not going to worry about taking shots away. But if you need him to hit some shots, he can do it. So I feel like Elijah Martin, I'm shocked he's not on more boards. So I like him as sort of an on-ball guy that can be a dog. And then Sion James from Duke, he would be more of the Lou Dort guy that I would be talking about defensively. But two great dogs on the ball that can move their feet really well, really quick guys, really agile guys. So yeah, Elijah Martin and Sion James, those would be the two guys on my list.
Just don't have James as the inbounder.
Yeah, lesson learned, KOC. I was there. That was tough. That was tough to watch.
Yeah. Other than that, I love James and Martin, dude. I'm like redoing my big board, but it'll launch probably either late Thursday by the time people hear this podcast or early Friday. Martin's growing on me, man. Like that dude just plays the type of way that teams win with nowadays. The Celtics last year, the Pacers now, the Thunder now. There's just the speed and the decisiveness and the energy. It's nonstop with Martin. He's one of the reasons why, like, obviously Walter Clayton is the big time shot maker for that Gators team that wins the national title, clutch as hell. But Martin's the energizer. They're not in that position to win a national title without Elijah Martin. So I think he's a perfect answer. Again, like we're on the same page with these guys.
I like it. Look at us. We're rolling. We didn't even talk to each other about this.
I know we did not. Let's see if we continue here with the streak. Number 6, who's this year's Tyrese Halliburton? This is a guard with questions, ends up becoming a star. Who's the Tyrese Halliburton in this draft class?
I feel like the basic answer that everybody would go to, and it's obviously because play style is a little bit similar, they have the same kind of electricity factor to their games. Walter Clayton Jr., I think, would probably be the one, because I also feel like Walter Clayton Jr. is built to have kind of an apparatus around him. I've talked about this before with Halliburton. Yes, it's Halliocentric. Yes, it's all about him, but also you need the two other arms of the apparatus to work. You need Nembhard and you need McConnell to kind of take care of the basic point guard duties defensively and offensively, and then you give Halliburton this ultimate freedom, right? That's sort of what I'm thinking here. Clayton had that at Florida, where he had the ultimate green light creatively to get a rebound, dribble out to the three-point line, and take a three, right? That is Steph Curry, that is Trae Young, that is Tyrese Halliburton, that is Walter Clayton Jr. So I feel like as far as a unique, strange skill set that you could buy into, and if you really believe in it being magical as a team like the Magic may, then Walter Clayton Jr. could definitely be that guy. The other name that came to mind that I feel like is sort of under the radar, and I would, I've tossed it back to you to get your thoughts on this. Jeremiah Fears.
I like it.
I just really think that Fears is a 1A point guard. I know he's a little bit smaller, but if you watch him and the way he carves, he's got it. There you go, KOC. So I feel like Walter Clayton Jr. is more of like a Tyrese Halliburton. He is very special in the way he plays. You can kind of curate a game and a style around him. But Fears, to me, feels like a guy that a team drafts him at 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever it may be, and they're like, wait a second, we just got our point guard of the future. And I think Fears, to me, is a guy who could be really good.
It's perfect his last name is Fears, because like he literally has no fear. Clutch, unafraid in big moments. I mean, he will challenge you at the rim, even though he's a smaller guy. He will try to dunk on you. I love Fears. I think he's a good answer. Then I wouldn't say he's going to be this year's Tyrese Halliburton, but Yegor Demon does come to mind in terms of the flaws with Halliburton NBA people had was, can he create his own shot? Will he become a reliable shooter? We know he can pass. We know he can make others better as a playmaker, but can he do those things? And with Yegor, it's similar, where it's like we saw him have a hard time turning the corner in the tournament at times. We saw some of the flaws with him as a shooter, very up and down, started hot, poor at the middle of the season, had some good moments in the tourney. So Yegor comes to mind as well. Even though I'm sort of a Yegor skeptic, I do wonder if he falls into that Halliburton bucket. Indiana, of course, has not yet made the NBA Finals. We're recording this before their potential closeout game against the Knicks. You'll potentially hear this before the results of that game. But question number 7 here, another Pacers player. Who's this year's Pascal Siakam? Because with Siakam, slow to develop in college, New Mexico State, slow to develop in the NBA. He averaged like 3 points per game as a rookie, but he becomes an all-star, potentially a multi-time champion. Who's this year's like toolsy forward that has that star upside as a second rounder?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I went back to Siakam's draft profile, and everybody called him Energy Big. That was the moniker. Right. An energy big for Pascal Siakam. Everybody expected him to kind of be this guy that would come in, get you some spot minutes, and then all of a sudden he kind of develops more of a scoring, creator, shooting acumen, and all this sort of stuff kind of falls into place. So as I sort of tried to run that same experiment, the name that came to mind, and I think he's probably maybe not as slow to develop, but, Carter Bryant to me feels like a tease in a sense, because I don't think he is any of the things that everybody seems to proclaim he already is. I think he can be those things. It's the ultimate projection. So as far as like a toolsy guy that can develop, I still think Carter Bryant has a lot of development left in his game, especially with the way that he thinks the game out. And he does have the tools to get there. The other guy that I really feel like is more in a Siakam build potentially, that is quote unquote energy big, Asa Newell with Georgia. I just think that Asa Newell is a really talented guy who has great touch, great feel. I think he kind of got boxed in college as more of a traditional back to the basket. I mean, he wasn't always back to the basket, but in college it is a more rigid structure typically. I think if you get him in an NBA system, you give him the basketball, maybe it's summer league, you say, hey, Asa, start the break sometimes, or you know what I mean? Just give like what they did with Bam back in the day.
He
right?
wants to do it, Tate. I talked to him on my podcast about a week ago, and I asked him like, "Who are your best comps?" And like he says Giannis. Like who's not going to say Giannis? That's probably
right.
Agent speaking through him. But to his point, it relates to what you're saying: handling the ball more, doing more stuff coast to coast, taking down a defensive rebound, starting the offense. That's something you didn't really see from him. But he flashes the skill, and I think the high school film shows a bit more of that with Asa, and that's why a lot of teams have a mid to late lottery grade on him. Others view him as a late first. I think that's a good answer, Asa Newell.
Yeah, I like the idea of him going in like the 13, 14, 15 range, because I think there's going to be a lot of teams that go back to, like you said, KOC, these guys have seen them since they're 15, and we see, what we see, but they've probably seen a whole lot more. So they know the full package with Asa Newell, and there's going to be some team out there that maybe, as we get to that range, they're saying, hey, he's the most upside we have here. Let's take a swing. And like you said, the selling point of Giannis, and you're sitting there at 15, you know what I mean? You start talking yourself into delusions of grandeur, you know what I mean? And then you make a big swing. So I really like Asa Newell. I like his game.
Number 8, Andrew Nembhard's brother, Ryan Nembhard, is in the NBA draft. How would you describe Ryan's game to somebody who's never seen him play?
A true point guard, a traditional point guard, and also a guy that is just the ultimate facilitator, head up point guard. He can deal with pressure. He has pretty much seen every coverage you can imagine throughout his time at Creighton and at Gonzaga. He's been blitzed. He's been picked up full court. I mean, he's kind of seen it all. And he also has sort of this natural knack for knowing where the pass is, where the play is. Getting ahead of the play is something that he's very, kind of acute at doing. He also if I'm a GM and I'm watching his brother, Ryan Nembhard, who I think is one of the best defenders on the perimeter right now, I'm just like, how do we not bring this guy in? I was shocked he wasn't invited to the Combine originally. I know he got invited after the G League Combine, but I just thought he would be there. He averaged 10 assists in college this year. I mean, I think the final number was like
2 turnovers, right?
I mean, and if you watch the tape, it's like, he's having to drum up the offense pretty much on every possession, right? I mean, he is dictating the terms of who's getting a shot, where they're getting a shot. Oh, we're late in the shot clock. I got to go get us a shot. I mean, like I said, he's a traditional true point guard.
High leverage moments,
right?
It's not like he's being safe with the pass. He's making difficult choices. To your point, that's what I don't know, like the historical numbers, but wasn't that one of the greatest assist to turnover ratios in college basketball history?
I think it was second or third all time at the end.
Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, but he had at one point in the season, like late February.
Yes.
Yeah, it was the best of all time. Exactly. But I mean, and if you watch, like it did pass the eye test. Like even when he was at Creighton, you know what I mean? I watched him at the Maui Invitational back in 2022 at Creighton. He had a thunderous dunk that was like, same with his brother. It's like sometimes they do these athletic things where you're just like, wait a second, I forgot that you could do that. You know what I mean? Like that's the other part with Nembhard, what I feel like is really enticing, because he does have another gear that he can get to. And I think defensively, if you unleash him just like his brother, he's going to be really nice to have in the backcourt. And I think a lot of teams are going to fall in love with Ryan Nembhard.
Yeah, I mean, I think Nembhard, even though he's only 6 foot, I think he actually measured at 5'11" without shoes at the Combine. He's gritty on defense.
As you know, Kevin, if you're under 6 feet now, like it's basically a death sentence. Like nobody under 6 feet plays in the NBA anymore. I mean, it's
basically is.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's moved fast.
But,
like Marquise Noel was the last
mm-hmm.
unicorn we had left at 5'7". Everybody else, it's like, yeah, we don't care. We're done.
But if you're betting on somebody, I think Ryan Nembhard's a good guy to bet on in the 50s or even the 40s in the second round, because he's a gritty defender still, and he's improved a lot as a shooter. He shot well last season at Gonzaga. He shot well in the NBA draft combine. I'm hearing he's shooting well in workouts as well. So the fact he could be a spot up guy in addition to running your offense off of the bench, Ryan Nembhard, I think, is my favorite sleeper guard in the second round. Who's your favorite second round sleeper guard, Tate?
I gave you one of them, Elijah Martin. I made him my Alex Caruso, so he's one of my favorite sleeper guards. The other one is Cam Jones out of Marquette. I just feel like
love it.
Cam Jones has a pro game. Cam Jones took over for Tyler Kolek. He was the number 2 to Kolek. He's already showed you he can be a supporting role guard. He's also showed you he can be a star lead guard. Whichever package you want to put Cam Jones in, he can do it. Now, the right hand is a question mark, especially passing with the right hand. He is a left-handed dominant guy. He does like to go left. So there are scouting things that are pretty easy to pick up on with Cam Jones, but the catch and shoot is solid. I think his size is really good, 6'4.5", 6'5", somewhere in that range. So, with shoes on, by the way. I know that we live in a world now where you got to do everything without shoes on because that's the combine measurements, but they play with shoes on. I keep it there. So he's about 6'4.5", 6'5" in my mind. So I'm a big fan of Cam Jones. I think he can be a microwave scorer. I also think that he can improve defensively. He was getting better later in the season with Marquette. He just has to be defensively engaged. I think if he's in a role, knows that's part of his role, he can really lock in. Maybe like a chaotic good version of a campaign in the future or something like that. But I really like Cam Jones and I like his game.
Who's your favorite second round sleeper big man?
That is that is a great question, and it is a fascinating question. Vlad Golden, I mentioned him before. I just like him as a traditional big, right? A rolling big, just a screener guy that we need. Maybe he's like in a Steven Adams type situation in this world where he's just like a big guy who gets strong and just is an enforcer at some level. So I really like Vlad Golden, especially like in the 50s range. Why would you not go after him? He had a great year playing off Danny Wolf. He can play with the big. He can roll. He can set hard screens, all that sort of stuff. And then the other guy is Eric Dixon, led college basketball in scoring last year. Just a lefty flamethrower, shoots threes, is a big man, can play big, can get switched out on the smaller guys. I think he'll get into a little bit of better shape so he can get out on the perimeter and defend. He does have quick feet. He does have good hands. So I know he's not really on any board, but I expect Eric Dixon will get signed by somebody, and I really like his game, so I'll go with those two guys.
Question 11, who's your favorite second round sleeper wing?
Sleeper wing. Well, two guys. One of them, I want to get your thoughts on him because I've heard some bad things just during the combine process and maybe some of the interviews. But my first one, who I fell in love with this year, my favorite RJ in college basketball, not RJ Davis, RJ Lewis, or RJ Louise, as Rick Pitino is now calling him. He's changed his name. That is how much he broke his heart during March Madness. But I don't know what happened, and I don't ever really need to know. I'm not here doing an investigative piece, but I just feel like something happened with RJ Lewis in that game.
Need Pablo Torre to do one.
Yeah, we need Pablo. Yeah, go find out about that. Leave Bill Belichick alone. So RJ Lewis. That game, that being his final game, especially, Kevin, after you watch the entire season, you watch the Big East tournament, because a lot of people were just like, hey, big game. He kind of shrunk when the lights were bright. I just watched him in Madison Square Garden where the lights are a whole lot brighter than Providence, Rhode Island in the second round of the NCAA tournament, and he absolutely dominated and was the MVP. Now, I don't know what happened after that. Leading into the NCAA tournament, they went on Jimmy Fallon. They made a song. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that was happening off the court that I think distracted RJ Lewis from basketball itself. I heard at the Combine, everyone was calling him a ball stopper. Everyone was saying that he was being selfish. Everyone was saying that he was taking shots away from other guys. This is not the RJ Lewis that I watched throughout the entire season. And now, again, that is a sample size, and there is the larger sample that's obviously being collected right now. But I do believe in RJ Lewis, especially defensively. Defense translates, rebounding translates. He's got great hands. He does have just kind of a natural ability to get better. As I watched him during the season, I felt like he was like growing as a player, as a creator in real time. So I really like RJ Lewis, and I'm not completely out. I would buy in on him, especially as you can buy the dip right now as he's dropping down draft boards. And then the other guy is Will Richard, another guy who the body wasn't right. He was kind of a bigger kid. He lost a lot of weight. He got in shape. He changed who he kind of was as a player, and he was a real big cog in the machine with Florida winning the national championship. So, especially defensively. So Will Richard is another name that I feel like I haven't seen on boards, but I really like him as a player. And again, I like the fact that he kind of created who he is as a player. And I do feel like there's more development there, and there's going to be a team that's going to be happy to sign him.
I think those are good ones. RJ Lewis, or Louis, as Patino would say.
Crazy.
I mean, I have my concerns with him, with the shooting, the decision making, but how much of that is me being anchored to how things ended with him, and as you said, compared to how the full season went for him, and could a team end up getting a steal for him in the late second round, or even undrafted if he were to fall that far? So I think he's a good bet as a second round sleeper because of all the success he had, because of the measurables, because of the positives we saw from him literally months ago. So I like that choice. Even if he ends up not working out, he's kind of worth a swing. Let's play a game here, Tate.
Yeah.
Draft, stash, or pass. I'm going to give you 3 prospects, and you're going to draft, stash, or pass each of those 3 guys.
Okay, perfect.
For question number 12, Drake Powell, Carter Bryant, and Cedric Coward. These are 3 risers. They could all be lottery picks potentially, or at least first rounders. Draft, stash, or pass. Drake Powell, Carter Bryant, Cedric Coward.
I think the right answer probably is, I think the right answer is Cedric Coward, Carter Bryant, then Drake to do a draft. Cedric Coward, I would stash.
You're passing on Drake Powell.
And I would pass on Drake Powell. But for me,
North Carolina Tar Heel.
I'm saying this is the proverbial right answer.
This is your answer. Your answer is your right answer.
My first is giving you the proverbial right answer. But for me, and what I've seen, I think Cedric would be who I draft. I still would draft Cedric first. I would jump Drake over Carter Bryant, and then I would put Carter Bryant as the one that I would pass on. And now I know that a lot of people are like, wait a second, isn't Carter Bryant the next Andre Iguodala? Now I hope he is. I really do, because I think he has a lot of natural tools. I talked to Caleb Love about him. Caleb, saw a lot of the things that a lot of other people see. I have heard on a grassroots level that he is the quote unquote ultimate tease. And you can read in between the lines there with that. So I feel like that would worry me a little bit because, again, he has all the tools. Cam Reddish would be the ultimate tease, just kind of put it in a box of what we're talking about. So that would be concerning to me. I know Drake's going to show up. I know Drake's going to defend. I think Drake's catch and shoot is actually severely underrated at this point as a skill set. And I just think as far as the personality that you're going to get, Drake's going to be a worker. He's going to be a good guy, more in like a Harrison Barnes type vein. You know what I mean? Just like a good guy to have in the building. So Cedric is that way. Drake is that way. I don't know Carter as well, not to say disparaging things other way, but just because I know those 2 guys so well, I would go Cedric, draft, and then I would stash Drake and pass on Carter Bryant.
I would give the same exact answer.
Okay. All right. That's good.
Carter Bryant is definitely a tease. I think he's a tease, and maybe he ends up becoming a reality, but Drake Powell has been more reality through high school and his freshman year at college. And, as I look back and watch him, I'm putting him in the mid-first round in my big board update. The dude, 40% catch and shoot threes, super versatile, long arm defender. He's one of the best athletes at the NBA draft combine. He's a good kid. I just feel like at a minimum, you're talking about a dude who's going to be a good 3-and-D player. We know he can attack closeouts in a straight line. If the handle improves, he's got a passing feel as well. There's just a lot of skills, man, with him. That I'd put him a little bit ahead of Carter Bryant. That's a tough question, though. Number 13.
It is. I would say this last thing. On-ball defense, there's an argument to be made that he's the best on-ball defender potentially in the draft, Drake. I mean, if you just watch at the end of the season, the way that he sits down in a stance and defends, I mean, those are the reasons. That's the floor. The floor is a 3-and-D, and the D is actually legit, which is nice.
How about his off-ball defense? Out of curiosity, with your time watching the Tar Heels, how would you grade Drake Powell as an off-ball defender?
Well, that would be more in the C range. I think you're talking A+ on ball, and you're more like C, got into the B- B range by the end of the season. Because again, this is team defense is is a learned thing. And what do you know, Kevin? What do we both know? Communication is really the calling card of off-ball defense, right? Communicating, calling out screens, things like that. There were some times this season at North Carolina, especially early, that was not necessarily happening, and Drake paid, on the back end with some of those decisions, whether it be back cuts or whatever it may be. So that stuff got better as the season, kind of waned on. But again, on ball, I'd take Drake against most anybody in this draft.
Number 13, Bigs. Malawach, Queen, Sorber, draft, stash, pass.
Draft Malawach, and maybe that's my own sort of folly, but I do believe kind of in the Malawach pitch, and I do believe that Malawach, the usage of this guy on offense was so low and almost comically so with Duke, and it just shows how good and deep Duke was that they didn't really even need his offense. That was kind of like a plus for them, but I do think that Malawach has more to offer, so I would draft him. I think Sorber is more interesting to me, so I think I would pass on I would draft. First, I would draft, and then I would. What is the term that we use?
You're drafting Malawach,
drafting Malawach, stashing Sorber, and then Queen.
Passing on Queen. Wow.
I put Queen not in the center category, though. Like, you know what I mean? Like, when I view Queen as like, we're going to get him slimmed down and we're going to get him.
He's a big, though.
Yeah, he's a big. I guess you're right.
He's still a front court player,
I view him
not
as like,
five.
If I take Derek Queen, like, I'm the Wizards, I already have length around him. I make him sort of our 0.5 or 0.4 or whatever it is, and I empower him to be the playmaker. You know what I mean? But if I'm just talking about truly the bigs that I bring in, that would be like, in my mind, Derek Queen is Kevin Love. And, that is sort of like he's in his own flotation realm of whatever Derek Queen is. So just in this exercise, I would do that. But if they make a graphic, KOC, I'm going to get crushed because I think Derek Queen should go number 6 to the Wizards. It's going to be conflicting reports here.
Number 14, draft, stash, or pass. Liam McNeely, Yegor Demon, Danny Wolf.
Man. I love Danny Wolf. I just got to say that off the chest. The Jewish Joker himself. I'm a big fan of Danny Wolf. I love his game. I think if I were the Timberwolves,
the Jewish Joker is great.
It's a great nickname. I do think that if I'm the Timberwolves, like, I take Danny Wolf. What do they have, the 17th pick or whatever it is? Like, I take Danny Wolf as Naz Reid insurance. It's like Naz Reid wants $100 million. Let's go get Danny Wolf for $2 million, and then we'll put a little bit of pressure on Naz Reid to maybe take like $85 million or something. But anyways, I really like Danny Wolf. I think I would take Dimon. I would draft Dimon. I would stash Danny Wolf. Those would be that would be my play there.
Wow.
But it would be tough
because I think McNeely. See you later.
I think McNeely, to me, it's like I like the highs of McNeely, but they're still
didn't
just
shoot well last year, man.
Yeah, the shooting
for a guy who's supposed to be a shooter.
Yeah, that's the concerning part with him. It's just the catch and shoot, especially. Like, I thought he did shoot better than Caravan. Let's give him credit. He shot better than Caravan last year. He was also supposed to be a catch and shoot guy. But yeah, Yegor Dimon, KOC, you kind of said it earlier, but I think he might have the best vision passing wise in the draft. So, just knowing that you could get that guy, he can play secondary creator. He doesn't have to be your actual point guard. He can defend because he obviously is so tall and long. So yeah, I think I'd take Dimon. I'd draft Dimon.
All right, let's talk about some mock draft scenarios here, Tate. Question number 15. The Bucks, they call up the Mavericks on draft night, and they offer Giannis for Cooper Flag and salaries needed to meet the requirements to get Giannis. Giannis for Flag. Are you saying yes if you're the Mavericks?
If I am the Mavericks, I am definitely not even entertaining the phone call because of what is already, like, they got respawned.
You're not answering. You don't want to know.
There were no phone call. Like, if I am the ownership group, if I'm, what's his name, Pat, whatever, Dumont, I am making sure that the lines are cut. No one can call Nico. We are changing his phone number. We don't want him talking to the Boston Celtics, especially. I feel like that's the team that I would be circling the most utmost to make sure that Brad Stevens does not get Nico Harrison's phone number and call him with some sort of tantalizing idea, put in his mind that Cooper Flagg's going to leave anyway after his rookie deal and come to the Boston Celtics, so you might as well rip the Band-Aid now. Like, that would be the terrifying phone call. But yeah, the Mavericks don't answer the phone. Do the right thing. You got literally the greatest second chance of all time to kind of right the wrong of what you did with Luka. You get a generational superstar who just happens to kind of be a power forward that fits into a similar vein as Dirk. If his career can play out in a similar way, that would be amazing. So as a franchise, the Mavericks should not pick up the phone. And honestly, if I'm Giannis, and I do think that the Bucks are working with Giannis, or at least in communication with Giannis. I think that Giannis has told them that it's either send me somewhere in the East, elsewhere in the East, where I can go and dominate, or like tell Chris Middleton to sign here for the minimum. And, you know, we try to figure out some way to get this machine going in Milwaukee for one more run. I don't know what it ends up looking like, but to me, Kevin, the Spurs are much more inclined to trade for Durant at number 2 than they would for Giannis. And I feel like the Mavericks, they can't. Even though the Mavericks kid definitely would take the phone call, I think internally that staff would be like, of course we want to have Giannis in this building. They just can't for PR reasons. So I feel like as much as the Giannis talk is very interesting and fascinating, and Europe loves the Spurs, right? As a continent, like that's the team over there. So, but yeah, you can't do it. Nico, don't do it. Leave Cooper Flagg in Dallas.
Don't answer the phone. Number 16, Dylan Harper, in all likelihood, is going to be the number 2 pick. Obviously, the Spurs have the number 2 pick right now. Is it a good or bad fit for Dylan Harper? Forget about the Spurs side of it here, but Dylan Harper, are you happy if you're going to the Spurs? Is this a good fit for you if you're in his camp?
No. I mean, it's not. And honestly, like that would be if I was the Bucks and I knew that Giannis was actually gone and we're doing the best for the Bucks deal. I think you go to San Antonio and you say, hey, we want our picks back from New Orleans. New Orleans wants a point guard. Zion wants a fresh start. Like, you know what I mean? You figure out some way to figure out like a 3-team trade there where, you know, the Bucks, the Spurs, the Pelicans kind of all get what they want. The Spurs get Giannis. The Bucks get Zion and some of their picks back, maybe 2 picks. Dylan Harper gets a fresh start in New Orleans, his own franchise, to be the point guard of that team, and he's got some pieces down there that can help him out, and maybe use
Nets?
Herb. Right, of the Nets, right?
He's from New Jersey. He grew up in New Jersey. He went to high school in New Jersey. He went to college in New Jersey. The Nets have the 8th pick, the 19th pick, 26th pick, the 27th pick, and the 36th pick. They have 5 top 36 picks in this year's draft, and then a bunch of others in the future. So, I mean, maybe
so what does that look like?
Up.
Is that like Cam Johnson and, you know, like is that what the
Cam
Spurs
Johnson
are looking
and number 8? Maybe the Nets could absorb some Spurs salary, or maybe it's a huge 3-way deal where KD finds his way in San Antonio as well, because it is intriguing that Shams Charania has said on Pat McAfee this week that there was mutual interest between the Spurs and Kevin Durant. He didn't say the Spurs liked him. He didn't say that Durant liked the Spurs. He said there was mutual interest in KD to the Spurs. And Wembanyama, when I interviewed him last year, I asked him, who were your basketball idols growing up? First answer, Giannis. Second answer, Kevin Durant. So, like, he loves KD. KD would be very interesting there. And I'm with you, Tate. Like, Dylan Harper, the fit with Fox and Castle, I think it can work. I think it can definitely work, but not to the level that it needs to from the Spurs perspective. And specifically for Dylan Harper, you are a point guard, dude. Like, ball should be in his hands, surrounded by space, playing high pick and roll. And that's not going to happen all the time, sharing the court with De'Aaron Fox. You're going to be in the corner a lot of the time. And I don't know where a lot of those touches are, because Fox is not a great spot up shooter. He's around 33, 34% in his career on catch and shoot threes. Harper's not a great shooter either. I just, if I'm Harper and I'm in his camp, I don't want to go to San Antonio unless Fox isn't there. If the Spurs were going to screw over Fox and flip him and trade him elsewhere, then sure, I'd love to be in San Antonio and play with Victor Wembanyama and hopefully win and contend for a bunch of championships. But I don't love the fit for him, and I'd much rather like New Orleans, as you said, or Brooklyn, as you said, like some of these these clean slate franchises where it just makes sense It doesn't make total sense for San Antonio. Number 3, the Sixers.
It is kind of unfortunate.
Sorry,
I was just going to say, it's just unfortunate that like both the top 2 guys are going to situations where they're not the franchise guy, right? You know what I mean? Like it's very strange. Yeah. And they both kind of deserve to go to their own franchise. So
I know.
It's all
it is the weirdest thing how it worked out this way. Question 17 for the 3rd pick here. The Sixers. Who the hell should they take here, Tate?
I just talked to Chris Ryan about this, and he was going through all the trade scenarios and what they could do. I had gotten like a crumb sent my way again, like everything you get told or gets kind of brought your way, you take with some sort of level of grain of salt. But I heard that Con Knippel was kind of in the mix as well as sort of
I like it.
A play now guy. I also think that there's a world in which maybe a team at 6. Maybe the Brooklyn Nets or something, somebody wants to trade up and maybe they're able to do something there and get a guy and trade back and maybe get who they originally wanted. And maybe that is Knippel and they get him at 7 or 8 or whatever it may be. But Ace Bailey, to me, if I'm the Sixers and I'm on the board and I got to make the pick and the pressure's coming on, it's got to be Ace just for the upside. I think I'd take best player available. I do like the idea of like a kind of a master and a protege situation with Paul George. Maybe that engages Paul George.
Paul George as a master in this situation?
Well, I mean, that's the downside. You know what I mean? Like, you're playing a dangerous game because probably Paul George's reaction is, why did you draft my replacement? I want out now. Podcast P out. So I don't know. I mean, I just think that's a very sticky situation. Daryl Morey's doing the best to like kind of cope around about how Joel Embiid's going to be back and, this is going to be great for them and they're going to be able to contend in the East. So, I mean, I like the pitch and I know this is kind of the last saddle up for this front office and this group with the Sixers, so they kind of need it to all work out. So, I mean, Ace Bailey, Trey Johnson, those would be the 2 guys on my board. I know VJ Edgecombe he's done a heck of a sell job as kind of like a utility role player, and now it's like, okay, well, let's take the fit. Let's the Hornets. Let's take VJ Edgecombe with the fit. You know what I mean? So maybe the Sixers have a similar thing where they're like, we need a cutter and we need someone who will defend without taking shots away from our guys, our main guys, and maybe VJ gets in that conversation. But if it were me, I'd take Ace and then I'd shop around Ace after the fact, get him to Summer League, let him look great. Let some team that has some assets and some players you like reach out to you and, do what needs to be done. That would be my pick.
I'm trading down. You mentioned the Hornets with VJ Edgecombe, Tate. It seems like that's the favorite right now. Mm-hmm. VJ Edgecombe to Charlotte. Do you like that fit? I don't get the impression that you do the way you're talking about it.
Well, it's not even about VJ. I saw Ant Wright, who I like on Twitter. He's very funny. He did like the comp. He was like, VJ Edgecombe is 6'5" Andrew Wiggins, and I do feel like that somehow fits perfectly. Because I do think that thing. You tell me.
I mean,
Kevin,
I know he won a finals with the Warriors, but I mean,
as the second best player, you know what I mean? That's what I mean.
It means he's going to miss a half a year for reasons nobody knows.
I don't know if that was the implication there, but it does like the athleticism. I know. Yeah, the athleticism is tantalizing. And obviously, I think VJ knows who he is as a player. I think he kind of can play more to his style, skill set, all that sort of stuff. So I do like him as a fit next to LaMelo and Brandon Miller. But Kevin, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but here's my rule of thumb. If you win 19 games, now I don't care how many people are injured, but if you win 19 games, there's no time for anybody to be talking about fit. You know what I mean? Like we don't have a fit conversation with 19 wins. Like there is no fit conversation. It is a best player available conversation. If they go with the best player available mindset, I think they end up with Trey Johnson instead of VJ Edgecombe. But I do feel like at this point, as you said, all signs point to VJ. And I do think VJ fits next to Brandon Miller and LaMelo. So it makes sense in a vacuum. But again, why are we drafting for fit when we won 19 games? That would be my big picture.
That's a good way to put it. But he might be the best player available too. He might be.
There
arguably.
You go.
I don't think he would be at number 4, but I understand the mindset. Question number 19, Tate. We're nearing the final stretch here of our 23 NBA draft questions. Question 19. Which shooters should the Orlando Magic target?
This was a fun question. I wrote this down. So the Magic have 3 picks in this draft, right? So they got 16, 26, and 57. Here's my pitch to the Orlando Magic. Shout out to all the friends of the program that work for the Magic. There's a great front office. They do a really good job. At number 16, I'm taking Will Riley if he's on the board. Illinois sharpshooter. I just think he has a natural gift. Yes, he reminds me of Caleb Houston. Yes, he reminds me of Jet Howard. Yes, we're going to take him at number 16.
You serious?
Well, here we go. This is the pitch, Tate. Kevin. This is the pitch. This is the pitch, though. This is the pitch to the Magic. God. All right, we're taking 3 shooters in this draft. We're taking nothing but shooters. So if Will Riley's a bust, as it seems like you believe,
are we sure he's a shooter? Are we sure? He shot 32% from 3 last year.
That's a question. But at least he can get the shot off because I care about FGAs. Goodness. He can get the shot off. At number 26, we're taking the guy who we just saw in March Madness make every shot it seemingly looked at, Walter Clayton Jr. We're taking the Florida kid.
I like this one. You're making me happy again, Tate.
Now we're back. Now we got a point guard. We also, before we do any of this, Kevin, by the way, before we do any of this, we call the Chicago Bulls. We ask to talk to Jerry Reinsdorf, and we say how much to get Kobe White to come down to the Orlando Magic.
I like this. I really like this.
Right?
It's going from bad to good to even better. I like
right.
This.
So that's before we draft Will Riley. We already had that call with Reinsdorf. Before we get to Will Riley. Will Riley is a secondary option here at number 16. Clayton at number 26. And then when option Z. And then at number 57, this is the real last option Z. We're taking Kobe Brea out of Kentucky.
I love it.
And we're just saying, hey, this guy is the definition of a shooter specialist. If he can't shoot for us, nobody can shoot for us. So we take 3 big swings. I'm not going to say they're going to be 3 hits. They might be 3 strikes. But again, we need shooting. Call for Kobe White. He can shoot the basketball. If they say no, there's nothing there, then draft 3 guys. Walter Clayton Jr. to me would be my favorite pick there. But Kobe Brea, maybe there's some upside. He was great at Dayton, looked good at Kentucky last year, and he can shoot the basketball. So if you want shooters, draft shooters. That's what I would say, KOC.
Question 20. Who should Minnesota take to bolster their final odds?
I love it. Danny Wolf. I said it a little bit earlier. Number 17. I just think Naz Reid, you saw it last night, or a couple nights ago, or I guess it was last night, the Minnesota game, when they went 5 out against OKC and they had more spacing for Ant to get in the lane and drive. And as the triple team came and they clogged the paint, he was able to make passes out. Danny Wolf, you can play 5 out with him. I think Danny Wolf is kind of like the cheap version of Naz Reid. And I think he can play 4-5. It keeps you big. He can create. They need other creators. And my last thing I'll say about the Timberwolves, they needed someone to get in the paint, touch the paint. The fact that they never pressed the Rob Dillingham button is pretty damning to me. To trade up for him, to basically say we bet on him, and TJ Shannon was great, so we got to give credit for TJ Shannon. But for Rob to not get any touches to me, KOC, that was really damning. Just in general with this Timberwolves team, because they really need somebody like him. So Wolf will help, create a little bit and help Anthony Davis. But man, they really need Dillingham to be something. And I was shocked he wasn't used at all.
I think they're going to reevaluate Finch as head coach. We'll see if they end up keeping him. But to me, it showed a lack of alignment between the front office and the coaching staff. Similar to, not exactly similar. The Denver situation between Malone and Booth was dramatically different. Those guys were bickering at each other. They didn't get along. But Malone didn't want to play young guys. Booth wanted to take young guys and have them played, get them minutes and develop them. You have a trade for Dillingham, as you said, giving up 2 picks, and you draft Shannon. Shannon doesn't play much at all throughout the year. Leonard Miller, last year's first-round pick, is stashed in the G League pretty much the entire year. Had a really good year down there. And Dillingham barely played at all. I'm sure Tim Conley and that Wolves front office would have loved for those guys to get developmental minutes throughout the season. But when you're Finch, you're feeling like, we got to do everything we can to make the playoffs. I can't develop these young guys. We're only the 6th seed. If they had lost, 2 more games, they need to win 2 games to get into the playoffs with the play-in. So, I understand it from that perspective, but at the same time, I think they should have found him more minutes over the course of the season, because that type of energizing scorer is what they were missing. Another guy who can create. Everybody's talking about Ant getting trapped and blitzed and all that. Well, that's in part because he's the only guy who generates offense when you get, 40-year-old Mike Conley out there, and DiVincenzo's more scorer than playmaker. That's why they got Dillingham, was for moments like that. So I don't know.
Maybe and you
this
can
year
sag off
guy.
Mike Conley sometimes, knowing that, he's not going to beat, or you can get up on him knowing he's not going to beat you with his first step. And then, Dillingham, you can't do that because athleticism.
Yep.
And I think that first step would have stood out. I think the Thunder would have had to do like a little bit of a recalibration if Dillingham came into the game with that kind of speed and athleticism. But it's a conversation for another day. But by the way, Tim Connolly, biggest free agent in the NBA this summer, right? He's a free agent. So
technically he is. We'll see. Yeah. I think he'll stay. A-Rod and Laurie won the trial, and they will be the owners of the Timberwolves. So I think he'll stay. Those are the guys who hired him. 3 more questions, Tate. Yeah. Number 21. These are some life questions here. If you could go back and give young Tate Frazier any piece of advice starting your career, what would that piece of advice be?
It's a great question. I think I would say not to like make it about the zombie land of it all, rule number 32, but I mean, enjoy the little things. I think early on in my career, I was so, I kind of was thrown to the wolves a little bit, not by, just because of how things played out, going from an intern at Grantland to, Bill starts this new thing and then he's like, you can edit audio. And I'm just, there was a lot of things where the stress of it all and like instead of just enjoying the little moments of like, man, that was really cool. We just did an interview with Judd Apatow and he talked about this and I got to, you know what I mean? Instead of like enjoying some of that stuff, I kind of let the stress of it all dictate the way that I, even just kind of existed, you know what I mean? I was always kind of in this heightened state of you remember, I used to be running around everywhere with like a chicken with my head cut off. So like my advice to my younger self would just be like, take a breath, take a beat, enjoy the little things, like give yourself a little bit of a break every once in a while. You know what I mean? Like that's the sort of the stuff that as I'm 10 years into my career, started in 2015. I definitely, and I tell that to younger people now, everybody wants to have all the answers. Everybody wants to be an overnight success. Everybody wants to say, why am I not the biggest star already? I mean, there is a process to everything. And, the journey of the whole thing is a whole lot better than the final destination. And, enjoying it along the way is the best way to view it. And as I see all the draft guys, like even the McDonald's All-American game, like I was telling all those guys, like enjoy getting these Adidas slides, like enjoy, this screwing around and going to dinner tonight with no responsibilities. Like these are the best times. So, that's sort of my advice to everybody younger. Just enjoy it. Don't freak out 24/7. Don't stress 24/7 because it moves by quickly. And you look up and you're like, wait a second. Like Kevin Durant said that the other day. He was like, I can't believe like I'm the OG, It's like happens fast.
I know it all does move by so quickly. It's true. I think that's a good advice for literally anybody in any age. Sometimes you have to remind yourself, even today, you got to remind yourself to enjoy those little things and take that breather. Question number 22, Tate. What's one moment in your life that made you fall in love with basketball?
That's a great question. I think the first time my first word was ball. I got that on video. My parents loved bringing that up. That my first word was ball. I had like a little mini tyke, Fisher Price basketball goal that I would just shoot around all the time in my room. I always had a hoop in my room growing up. But the first time that I remember just like being kind of in awe of it all was Jamison Curry, the first Curry from North Carolina basketball history. He broke my great uncle's scoring record. We went to the game 2003, so I was 10 years old. And so we get there. My great uncle gets like, out at half court with Jamison. They take the picture, all this sort of stuff. And it was the first time I heard the song Yeah by Usher and Little John. A cultural moment you'll never forget. And like as I watched that game and Jamison Curry just like, I think he had 48 points the game that we went to, but it was just like magnificent to watch. And again, this is high school basketball, but just like it was one of those things seeing in real time at 10 years old, like this level of mastery. And granted, Jamison Curry, ended up not going to North Carolina, going to Oklahoma State, having some issues or whatever. But like in that moment, he's a 5-star recruit breaking the high school scoring record. And he was like on a different level. And it felt like I was watching like some sort of, like someone painting the Sistine Chapel or something. I don't know. I just felt like I was working like a master at his craft. And I remember the first time that I felt that on TV was 1998 in the finals, watching the Bulls and watching Jordan. That was like different level of like, man, this is unbelievable. Vince Carter at Carolina was kind of a similar feeling.
How old were you that age? At 98?
98, I was 5. So that's kind of like my.
You
I remember
have a
watching
long memory. I don't remember anything when I was 5.
I also feel like in North Carolina, you almost grow up in like a decade behind you. So like I almost remember more things like in my early, to like 13, 14. Like once the internet and computers were everywhere, I feel like I lost a lot of my memories. But prior to that, I remember a lot. But I just remember watching that Bulls series and my parents telling me that like this is the last time you'll watch Michael Jordan. And I remember like crying when it was over. Like they won the championship and they're crying out of celebration. I was crying because I'm like, I'm never going to watch Michael Jordan again. And my brother was older, so he had watched all of them, you know what I mean? And he's just like, yeah, you really missed out, you know? So the Jameson Curry game, yeah, you're an idiot. So the Jameson Curry game, of all people, that was like the time where it was like, wow, this is just, obviously played and everything. So, but that was the moment for me that I kind of go back to of just like, man, I love being in the gym and I love seeing just like this poetry kind of happen in real time. It's like a dance or something. I don't know. It's like, it's like watching a play. It's great. It's high level stuff.
It is unscripted, live, never know what's going to happen, and can be these incredible moments like you've never seen before. That's why sometimes it's so nice to be there, like whether it's in the arena or just watching it from home, watching it live. Like it sure as hell beats like watching highlights of the Pacers come back against the Knicks in game 1. Watching that live was thrilling, right? All right. Last question here, Tate, for you. Number 23. What do you love most about the game of basketball?
It's a great question. I think that I love the reason why a lot of people ask about like basketball, and it's like I think there are 3 sports that we have going on that are basketball related, whether it's EuroLeague, college, or NBA. But like the game is the game, and like I love the game itself, and I love that in the game of basketball, even with all we live in the foul merchant era and everything. Like at the end of the day, like the game kind of dictates the world that we live in. And like, I've always felt kind of settled in the fact, like we've had moments in the NBA where we got the rigging and, the Aisha Curry tweet once upon a time, you know what I mean? Like these are moments in NBA history that we all can kind of point to. Remember the Aisha tweet?
Life? What? No, I'm just like the dictating life aspect. I'm confused by.
Well, I just like the game itself. Like I don't know. It just it all kind of seems like at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, like it kind of feels like it's right. Like I don't know. Like sometimes like history is like obviously written by the winners and things like that. But like the game itself and even the respect that certain players get on the back end. You know what I mean? Like You'd be shocked how many guys that are older. I asked them who the greatest ever is, right? Because this is the LeBron conversation that we've had in our time growing up, the GOAT conversation. You ask these guys, the variability of the answers is so funny, but then the respect for and appreciation for what you've seen people do playing this game is always the same. Like Michael Ray Richardson, the Sugar Man, is always one of the funniest ones. Like you'll ask certain guys in the 80s and they're like, yeah, the Sugar Man for sure. Like it's definitely Michael Ray Richardson, no doubt about it. You know what I mean? Like Dominique Wilkins. I asked Dominique, I'm like, who's the GOAT? This guy, Michael Jordan, all around it, draped around him, Larry Bird, everything's like, yeah, definitely the Sugar Man. You know what I mean? But like, that's why I love the game so much, because it's like there's an appreciation factor. It's like art. It's like there's no one that's going to be like, he's the greatest painter of all time objectively. It's like, no, we can have an appreciation for these different styles and the different ways that they approached it. The way that Rasheed Wallace approached basketball is a whole lot different than the way, that Tyrese Halliburton approaches the game of basketball. But they both could sit down, look at the way that they play it, and have an appreciation for how they play it and how they approach it and how they attack it. And also have like this baseline of comprehension between two people through the game. And I think like the amount of different backgrounds that come together through basketball is really special. And in a world where we're all trying to figure out ways to divide each other, it's really special to have like one thing that brings us back together. And that's why, I mean, European, African American, Canadian, Norwegian, whatever country you're from, Australian, right? Like we all watch this game and it translates, and same with soccer. And so it's a beautiful thing. So a long-winded way of saying it's the greatest game and I love it so much.
It's in the name Basketball Without Borders, right? It does bring people together. Tate, appreciate you joining me today, man. Thank you.
Of course, man. Anytime you need me, and good luck the next month. I know it's going to be a long one.
Appreciate it. You as well, Tate. Enjoy your college basketball offseason. Enjoy the drafts.